Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today we're doing something a little bit different, which is we're going to have a look at the presentation from Elon Musk regarding Neuralink, his new company, and we'll watch a shortened version of the presentation, and I'll try to comment it and discuss with you guys what you think about it and if you would try it, etc. So I think without further ado, let's jump right into the video and see what's going on. By the way, I skipped the intro video, so we'll just jump right into the presentation.
So that video was not Shutterstock. That was actually Neuralink. So
Classic Elon with his jokes.
That's actual video from the company. So if you want to get a sense for what it's like to work at Neuralink, that video is indicative of the atmosphere of Neuralink. It's an incredibly talented team, and you're going to hear a lot from them tonight. So we're going to actually go quite into depth on what we're doing, why we're doing, how we're doing it. And I'm just incredibly impressed with the caliber of talent at Neuralink. And in fact, the main reason for doing this presentation is recruiting. And this will be a slow process.
So that's quite interesting, actually. The ones who watched the Joe Rogan's podcast, they might have seen that Elon actually announced a big project, which I think is Neuralink. So, yeah, let's continue.
Where we will gradually increase the issues that we solve until ultimately we can do a full brain-machine interface. Yeah, this is going to sound pretty weird, but achieve a sort of symbiosis with artificial intelligence. But I think with a high bandwidth brain-machine interface, I think we can actually go along for the ride.
Here Elon mentions the high bandwidth, and I think that's a crucial point because in the presentation he also says that the problem humans have is a low bandwidth, because we have the first so-called layer, which is the limbic system, then we have the cortex for all the thinking and planning, then we have the third layer, which Elon calls the tertiary layer, which is basically our phone. However, if you type in your phone, let's say you write a message to another person, the maximum output speed is the speed you type. So that's definitely a limit. And just imagine that you could send thoughts with the device from Neuralink from yourself to another person. Do we even speak anymore then? That's crazy to think about.
And we can effectively have the option of merging with AI. I think this is extremely important.
Now the question here is, if we are merging with AI, who's taking over? Are we still in power? Or might there be some scenario where AI will take over? That's actually quite interesting, because let's think about this. Let's say you're at a street and you could turn right or left, like you're walking to a certain position, you could turn right or left, and then your device from Neuralink says you should go left, but actually you wanted to go right, so your body wanted to go right, or your conscious self, however you want to call it, but Neuralink says no, you go left, because the AI might know that if you go left, the risks of being hit by a car or meeting a person that you don't want to meet might be lower. So that's quite interesting, to be honest. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Quite interesting thought.
Composed of nearly 100 billion cells called neurons. Neurons come in many complex shapes, but generally they have a dendritic arbor, a cell body called a soma, and an axon. The neurons of your brain connect to form a large network through axon-dendrite junctions called synapses. At these connection points, neurons communicate with each other using chemical signals called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are released from the end of an axon in response to an electrical spike called an action potential.
Yeah, and actually these spikes can be detected. So I think it is in the paper. Oh, wrong tab. I think you can see these signals in the paper. Yeah, these are the signals. And if you zoom in, you can see these spikes, or here on the right hand side. Yeah, where you can see some spikes. And actually, if you have a look at the whole presentation, you can see how this works. So you have the signal on the left hand side, then you amplify the signal, filter the signal, and then you have an analog to digital converter. And an algorithm actually then interprets the zeros and ones.
When a cell receives enough of the right kind of neurotransmitter input, a chain reaction is triggered that causes an action potential to fire, and the neuron to in turn relay messages to its own downstream synapses. Action potentials produce an electric field that spreads from the neuron and can be detected by placing electrodes nearby.
So this thing, the electrode that you have seen, actually this has been done in the past, called deep brain stimulation, which you can see here as you have big two electrodes that you can see, which were hammered into your brain. But as far as I know, it's the size of these electrodes from Neuralink are 1/10 the size of a hair, so it's very, very tiny and flexible, which you need actually.
Allowing recording of the information represented by a neuron.
Our goal is to record from and stimulate spikes in neurons, and do so in a way that is orders of magnitude more than anything that's been done to date. And
now, Elon mentioned here that they will record the data. Then the question would be, where do they store the data? Is it inside the device, behind your ear? Or is it stored on a server? I think also one person asked from the audience if it's stored on an AWS server, which I think might not be the case. Otherwise, at some point someone will definitely abuse this. But I think they will store it locally, also to keep latency low, and yeah. But then also, yeah, about the size of the electrodes. It's very crucial to have them very, very tiny, otherwise, or let's say the chances of damaging a blood vessel are very low. Yeah.
And safe and good enough that you can. It's not like a major operation. It's sort of equivalent to sort of a LASIK type of thing. So this is in contrast to the best FDA-approved system, which is like a Parkinson's deep brain stimulation thing, which would have on the order of 10 electrodes. So the system, even in version 1 that we're going to unveil today, is capable of 1,000 times more electrodes than the best system out there, and they're all read and write. So this is really quite, I mean, for something to be 1,000 times more than what is publicly approved is quite a big difference. So there's very tiny threads that are about 1/10 roughly of the cross-sectional area of a human hair. So they're extremely.
That's what I mentioned.
Threads. In fact, the threads that we have, like I said, even in version 1, are about the same size as a neuron. So if you're going to go stick something in your brain, you want it to not be giant, you want it to be tiny.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I also showed you here in deep brain stimulation. They're quite big, and the Neuralinks are way smaller than those.
And to be approximately on par with the things that are already there, the neurons. You really need this to be done with a robot because it's very tiny and it needs to be very precise. So you don't want to pierce a blood vessel. So when so each thread, the robot looks sort of basically through a microscope and inserts each electrode specifically, bypassing any vasculature, any.
The thing is that these electrodes that are put into your brain, they stay. So these are fixed hardware, The only thing that will be changed is the device behind your ear, so the chip, which is, let's just imagine in a funny scenario that you still have different classes of humans then maybe, because you could discriminate other people because, hey, this girl right here, this boy has the N1 chip, but I'm better than you because I have the N2 chip and I can think and develop faster because I have the next generation of chips. So yeah, I think if it's affordable for anyone, there should be no problem, but I'm pretty sure this will be abused at some point. It's in human nature.
Any kind of like blood vessel, and making sure it's like it can be inserted without causing trauma or minimal trauma. So just to give you a sense of scale, this is how tiny the threads are. That is not even a big finger, that is a small finger. So these threads are just like I said, way smaller than hair, and there's 1,000 of them. And this is what the robot looks like. It's sort of quite a complex device, but it all comes down to a very tiny point. So just we want to just like you see the robot on the left, and then the
yeah. So the robot, you can find all the details from the robot either in the video or in the paper. So we'll just skip to see how it inserts the threads. Look how tiny these are.
That's a very zoomed in view. So they're all very tiny. And the robot is very selectively applying them very delicately, and then this is what
this has already been tested with mice as well as monkeys, and I think they mentioned at the end of the presentation that a monkey was already able to use that chip to control a computer, as far as I know, which is crazy. So this is also an ethical question, like should they test it on animals? But then one of the guys argued, okay, we need this, but we are careful. It's for the best of humans, so to speak. Yeah. It's quite difficult, actually.
The chip looks like. So, with action potentials. So each one of those represents one electrode.
Okay, so that's what we have seen, and I showed you the converter, how it works. But you can find everything in the presentation. I'll link the video down in the description if you want to see it.
So, precision, which is dilated to 8 millimeters, and then the chip is placed through that, and then it goes back to being 2 millimeters, and you can basically glue it shut. You don't even need a stitch. And then the interface to the chip is wireless, so you have no wires poking out of your head. Very important. So it's basically blue.
If it's wireless, then cybersecurity or security in general will definitely become an even bigger issue. Because let's just imagine someone hacks your brain, or let's just imagine that a government could hack into people's heads and change their political beliefs or use it for propaganda purposes. But yeah, that would never happen. We know it.
Bluetooths to your phone. Because we'll have to watch the App Store updates for that one. Make sure we don't have a driver issue. And we hope to have this aspirationally in a human patient before the end of next year. So this is not far.
I'm Max Hodak. I'm the president of Neuralink. So I've wanted to build a neural interface has really been like a central goal of my life for basically as long as I can remember. I think like we talk about AI being potentially the last invention that we have. I think that a high bandwidth BMI might be like really the first invention of any.
Now that this guy mentions AI, the thing is that I saw a lot of people commenting that Elon is against AI, which is actually not true. Because if you look it up, you see that Elon actually is for AI, but it has some limits, of course, and but he sees the bad side of AI, of course. not as some super enthusiastic guys that only see the positive side of AI. And I think Elon's approach is like, okay, if we cannot be better than AI, and if we cannot beat it, then let's just join it.
Anyways, of like the next chapter of us. It's just really, like as Elon alluded to earlier, everything about your experience, your thoughts, your memories, it's all in your brain and represented in the firing statistics of action potentials.
Now also, now that he talks about thoughts, what's about the subconscious? Can you extract subconscious thoughts? I'm not an expert in this. Maybe someone let me know in the comments. It would be interesting to know. Or if you could upgrade your chip, let's say from an app store or however it is called, could you just download thoughts from people? Let's say I visit a new country, I do not know anything about this country, then I could download it from a person that lives in this country, and suddenly I would know everything about this country, where I have to go for dinner, where to find the best hotels, etc. Which would be cool. But then, do you also download the thoughts with it, or could you filter like emotional thoughts from thoughts that you actually want to have? It's interesting.
We knew, as Elon mentioned, that whatever we built, we wanted it to be completely wireless. It had to be something that would last for a long period of time, not something that you'd have to take out at 2, 3, or 4 years in. This is a photo of some of the prototypes that we've gone through over that time. So we started on the far left. That's an entirely passive board that has 64 electrodes on it and connects to connectors that go to big external amplifiers. And then we added integrated electronics with our first custom chip. That's also 64 channels. And then there was a big leap to the device that Elon showed a photo of earlier. That has 3,072 electrodes in a fully implantable package with just a...
But the question is, can it run Crysis at 60 FPS, man? Tell me. Please tell me. I'm genuinely curious.
USB-C port coming out. And then we took a step back in channel count, because remember we have to optimize safety, longevity, and bandwidth all together. And so in order to optimize...
longevity is also like a very interesting topic for me as an engineer, because what materials would they use inside of your brain for the electrodes to make sure that it will hold as long as possible? I'm quite curious.
Some of those other things, we moved to an easier to manufacture system that has 1536 channels and a USB-C port. And those last two are the focus of the paper that we released today. And they taught us a lot about the architecture that we think was the basis for our first human product that we're calling N1. And the central component of that is the N1 sensor. It's a little hermetic package. When it's fully assembled, this is missing an outer mold. It's into an 8mm diameter, 4mm.
So about the measurements, you can find them in the paper. It's right at the beginning. So I think we'll just skip that one. So if you go to the paper and the very top, you can see how many channels, the size of the chip, etc. So we'll just skip a little bit forward.
Impetus for this is just, for our first patients, we're looking at four sensors, 3 in motor areas and 1 in a somatosensory area. And that connects wirelessly through the skin to a wearable device that we call the Link, which contains a Bluetooth radio and a battery. It'll be controlled through an iPhone app. You won't have to go to a doctor's office and have them have an exotic programmer to configure it. And so for the first product, we're really focusing on 3 distinct types of control. The first is giving patients the ability to control their mobile device.
Well, that's actually cool now that it talks about the doctor and patients. So if someone has a device and AI knows how to help the person, you could actually heal people. Let's say they have depression or they have Parkinson, and they would not need their caretaker anymore, which is amazing if you ask me. So it would be super cool. But then there's a question of, okay, we lose jobs, and yeah.
I heard from over and over again from patient groups that if you have to have a caretaker around to press buttons for you, what's the point? You might as well have them do the thing. You have to get self-sufficient using the devices on your own. But we are working as hard as we can towards our first in-human clinical study next year.
We developed
Okay, first clinical study. Would you participate in this? Would you like to be patient one? Let me know in the comments. I'm not sure if I would try it. I would be quite nervous, because if something goes wrong, you're screwed. Let's just skip a little bit forward. Okay, that's how the...
Or excited about, except in the most dire circumstances.
That reminds me of the Matrix.
Usually a clamp is attached to the skull to keep it rigidly immobilized to the operating table.
Let's just ask Keanu Reeves if he wants to be patient one.
We often shave all or most of the patient's hair. Patients can end up with large visible scars. At Neuralink, we want to create an entirely different patient experience, something more like LASIK. We even want this to be possible under conscious sedation. That means you can get rid of the complexity and the risk of general anesthesia, as well as many of the unpleasant side effects, nausea, sore throat from a breathing tube. But our aim is to simplify the procedure, down to the injection of local anesthetic, a very small opening in the skin.
Okay, let's just skip a little bit forward. This is the sensor itself. You could find this as well in the paper. Then here the signals with the spikes. How the spikes are extracted with an algorithm.
Those neurons, I'm going to rearrange them so that they're in the order of the tuning that they have, just as I told you about those two neurons. And if you do that, look what happens. Now suddenly structure emerges. And I think you'll agree, looking at that there's information in that stack of neurons that tells you about the movement. And that's exactly what we want to do. We want to do that kind of magic in an automated way to read out the movement. The way we do that is by building something that we call decoding algorithms. These are mathematical algorithms that we tune based on data like these to be able to take in just those rasters of spiking activity and output the movement that the person wants to make. For these little fake data, I built a very, very simple decoder, and sure enough, it's able to capture the intended movement. This is what we want to do.
Let's just imagine we have this in competitive sports, even esports, where people have these AI devices behind their ears, and it would be crazy to see actually what happens. Then the Dota 2 game would last, I don't know, maybe 10 days or what. It's crazy.
To do on a bigger scale. That even if you're not actually making the movement, even if you're just thinking about the movement, or even if you're watching someone else make movement, the cells in motor cortex respond in a similar way. With that, we think that people will be able to get naturalistic control over their computers, not just a mouse, but also a keyboard, game controllers, and potentially other devices. That's what we're trying to do. So potentially, with a device like this, you could restore speech to a paralyzed person who's no longer able to talk. But there's no reason in principle that we can't reach all of motor cortex. And that would give us access to any movement that a person thinks about, any movement at all. A person could imagine running or dancing or even kung fu, and we would be able to decode that signal. But no.
Let's just imagine you could just download from the store of where you can find all the apps for this device. Hey, I want to learn kung fu. I download the kung fu app, or I want to learn how to play the guitar, and then you download the app, etc. You can basically learn any skill if this is a successful project.
Neuralink wants to do is to give people the ability to tap into those representations, to get better access to that information, both to repair broken brain circuits and also to ultimately give us better access to better connections to the world, to each other, and to ourselves.
So quite interesting video as we have seen. I'll put the link of the video down in the description as I previously mentioned. So please let me know in the comments what you think about this project. I think it's very, very interesting, and I would love to see what happens with it in the future. Yeah, would you try it first? Where do you see the big advantages but also disadvantages of this project? I'm sure that military government will definitely abuse this and try to control people. And then the question is about the security, as we mentioned. Where is the data stored? Where is it trained? will there be one point where AI takes over, so that you as a human being have no control over the system anymore? So very interesting questions, also ethical questions. If we really should test it with animals right now, what happens if someone tries to murder a person? Who's responsible for this, the device or the person itself? So please let me know in the comments what you think. Make sure to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like these where I react to videos, talk about AI, psychology, etc. Make sure to hit the notification bell and see you in the next video. Peace!